Okay, let's just jump right into this. In today's explainer, we are completely shattering a myth, the myth of the monolithic AI. You know the one, this idea of a single, giant, omniscient brain just sitting in a glowing box somewhere. Instead, we're going to explore this really brilliant framework called the Warden Architecture by Christopher Coleman. And the big takeaway we're focusing on today? It's the idea that in advanced systems, trust is not a permanent badge. It's temporal evidence. It has a strict expiration date. So grab your notes and let's get into it.
The AI decided. The AI reasoned. The AI failed. I mean, we use phrases like this literally all the time, right? But here's the thing. It's actually fundamentally misleading. When we talk like this, we're anthropomorphizing complex software. We're talking about artificial intelligence like it's one cohesive entity with a single mind. But as these systems scale up, that monolithic model completely falls apart. There's no single AI magically making a choice.
Because think about what's actually under the hood. A modern intelligence system isn't a single brain. It's a sprawling ecosystem. Yes, you have foundation models, but you also have multiple agents, memory retrieval mechanisms, APIs, hard-coded security policies, raw network infrastructure, physical sensors, and of course, human operators. So when a system like this acts, which one of these pieces is the intelligence? Well, the reality is, intelligence is distributed across all of these parts. It's layered, and honestly, it's often temporally unstable. It is absolutely not just sitting in one magical box.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're covering the monolithic AI myth, cognition meets consequence, why trust is temporal, memory is not truth, and finally, governing emergent AI fleets. Section 1. The monolithic AI myth, deconstructing the machine. Now, what's really interesting here is how Christopher Coleman highlights cognitive scientist Joshua Bach. Bach's crucial insight was that cognition isn't magic. It can actually be broken down into explicit mechanisms, things like goals, attention, memory, and simulation. And treating cognition as an architecture, that completely shifts our paradigm. Instead of asking the old basic question, did the AI give me a good answer, we can demand a lot more. The new governance question becomes, what mechanism produced this conclusion? We want the provenance. We want the state history. We need to know exactly what the machine observed and if its underlying policy shifted. It's about demanding hard evidence, not just shaking a magic 8-ball and accepting the response.
Section 2. Cognition and consequence. From thought to action. So where exactly does cognition become consequence? Because think about the operational reality here. A model can sit there and reason for 10,000 tokens, running simulations, making plans, and literally nothing has happened in the real world yet. Zero consequence. But the exact moment it generates a shell command, or calls an API, or tweaks a configuration file, that boundary right there is where intelligence crosses into the physical world. And that is exactly where governance has to step in.
To manage that boundary, we really have to separate two critical concepts, awareness versus authority. A system might need massive, broad awareness, taking in data from every sensor and network log just to figure out its environment. But, and this is absolutely crucial, observation is not authority. Think of it like a security guard watching a massive bank of camera feeds. They have total awareness of the building, sure, but they definitely shouldn't automatically have the authority to, say, launch a missile or lock down the city. Just because a component observes or interprets a signal doesn't mean we just hand over the keys to execute an action.
To enforce this, the Warden framework uses a really deliberate progression. It's kind of like an inverted triangle. At the very top, you have this massive observation surface. Step 1, observe. Then it filters down. It interprets. It reduces evidence. It detects any contradictions or disagreements among its subsystems. By the time you get down to the bottom, step 6, authorize, it has filtered all those broad, messy observations down to a highly bounded decision. It absolutely refuses to collapse awareness and control into a single step.
Section 3. Why trust is temporal. The half-life of evidence.
Okay, if you take one single thing away from this explainer, let it be this. Trust has an operational half-life. An identity might be completely valid at 9 a.m., but entirely compromised by 9:05. Machines drift, models change their behavior, network relationships that looked perfectly fine yesterday suddenly look super suspicious today. Because the environment is constantly shifting, our confidence in any piece of evidence has to naturally decay over time. Trust is temporal evidence, plain and simple.
And that brings us to what Warden calls the real-time factor, or the RTF layer. Think of this just like human memory. I mean, if you remember something perfectly from 10 years ago, you still wouldn't trust that memory with absolute 100% certainty to navigate today's world, right? Because context changes. Well, AI governance has to act the exact same way. It must continuously, and I mean constantly, evaluate the recency and temporal validity of the signals it receives.
To pull this off, a temporal trust system has to do this constant rapid-fire interrogation. It's always asking, how recent is this signal? How trustworthy is this source today, right this very second? Has the environment changed? Has newer evidence popped up that totally contradicts what we thought we knew just 5 seconds ago? A cognitive architecture might hold a model of the world, but it's the governance system's job to make sure that world model hasn't expired.
Section 4, Memory is not truth. Governing persistent beliefs.
We so often fall into the trap of treating memory as truth, treating whatever data we retrieve as absolute, unquestioned reality. But memory is not truth. It's just context. It is literally just one piece of a temporal evidence landscape. And this brilliantly illustrates why a system with massive cognitive power but ungoverned memory is inherently incredibly dangerous, because it might act decisively on a belief that became totally obsolete an hour ago.
As multi-agent systems develop these persistent shared memory banks, we can't just blindly pull data from them and run with it. Before we grant any operational authority based on a memory, we have to put on our forensic investigator hats. We need to ask, who wrote it? When was it written? Under what conditions? Was it contradicted by a different agent later on? Did a compromised component taint this belief before it was even stored? Memory gives us context, sure, but it has to be governed exactly like any other temporary signal.
Section 5. Governing Emergent AI Fleets, the Multi-Agent Ecosystem.
So we aren't just dealing with single agents anymore. Autonomous intelligence is getting incredibly distributed. You've got agents communicating, delegating tasks, sharing memory, specializing, and out of all that, we get emergent behaviors, actions and strategies no human developer ever explicitly designed. In a multi-agent fleet, this quote right here is the golden rule of Warden. Local competence does not equal global alignment. Think about it. You could have a single compromised agent in a fleet. It might have valid credentials. It might reason flawlessly. It uses APIs perfectly. Locally, it's highly competent, but its localized objectives could fatally diverge from the collective system's rules, making it a massive security threat.
Let's see how this builds a completely new paradigm. Under the old monolithic model, trust was a static binary, just trusted or untrusted. But under fleet governance, trust is temporal. It's measured in real time. Intelligence moves from a centralized mind to a distributed ecosystem. Authority goes from being handed out broadly to being highly bounded and constantly earned. And verification shifts from just looking at a single chain of thought to rigorously comparing an actor's claims against independent machine evidence. Advanced governance isn't a simple good or bad check anymore. It's about tracking position, trajectory, and change across an entire network.
And that leads us to the Warden philosophy, which really summarizes this whole paradigm shift. As Coleman writes, not one mind, not one map, not one source of truth. Instead of taking all these different distributed domains, network behavior, identity, spatial context, and forcing them into a single artificial representation way too early, we preserve their differences. We keep those contradictions visible. We put evidence first, we treat trust as temporal, and we keep authority strictly bounded. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Once we strip away the magic and intelligence truly becomes an observable, distributed architecture, how do you govern it without forcing it back into the dangerous myth of a single, solitary, synthetic brain? The future of AI is a complex temporal ecosystem, and learning how to survive in it means realizing that trust is never permanent. It's always ticking. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this shifted how you view the machines around us. Keep questioning the evidence, and I'll see you in the next one.